Yesterday I finished the show and I told you that a new congressional continuing resolution had passed on Tuesday night. So yesterday was Wednesday and I hadn't seen it yet. I said, we'll see. And then I talked to Jason Smith, the chairman of Ways and Means. We went on to the bigger issue, which is not the CR, but the budget resolution and the reconciliation process and what's going to be in it and when it's going to get done. Should there be one? Should there be two? And we just moved forward because the CR was done. By the time I got back, I did 9 miles yesterday. I'm in the ReliefFactor.com studio, and I will tell you about Relief Factor in just a moment because 9 miles is pretty long, but nice day yesterday. By the time I got back, that takes me close to 3 hours. By the time I got back, it was over. The CR had collapsed. And I said, what in the world? So I went and I checked, called my friends at Conservatives for Lower Health Care Costs. I said, what's up? And they write back. Schumer and the Democrats are trying to push through a monstrous 600-plus page, $50 billion end-of-year spending bill that would undermine President Trump's agenda just weeks before he takes power. The stuffed stocking spending bill includes disastrous policies like the one that would mean a dramatic expansion of government invention in the private healthcare market. Including handing Big Pharma a massive profit windfall at the expense of the American people. The sneak attack must be stopped. Tell your listeners they are the key. Every year, Big Pharma hikes prices on hundreds, even thousands of prescription drugs by more than the rate of inflation. Drug companies set the price, they hike the price, and they ensure that Americans stay locked into paying their high prices by blocking competition, spending billions on obnoxious ads, pushing on these ads on the rest of the world. Don't be fooled, Hugh. Tell your listeners, go to pharmawindfall.com, pharmawindfall.com, and lower healthcare costs. That's one of many. Now, they sponsor the show, so I got to talk to them, but I like to talk to them. I want to know what they think. Then I waited to see what the Fed had to say, because the Fed was meeting yesterday, and I'm out again. I'm gone for 3 hours, and the markets have opened up pretty well, and I don't get any alerts, and Palantir is doing great. It's the only stock I own. I've moved to all the cash except for Palantir, and awaiting. I think the market's going to adjust, but I think Palantir is going to keep going up. But I don't know anything. I don't make recommendations, but I am waiting to see what the Fed does. Well, the Fed's crashed the market. Feds come out and say, we're not really going to keep cutting rates because inflation is still here. And it is still here. Joe Biden is not killed. I don't want them to cut rates until inflation is dead. Inflation's not going to go down until productivity goes up. And inflation means higher interest rates. And so I'm going to do the market update early, brought to you by Nick Rovich and his team at AmericanFederal.com, because I want you to know how bad it was yesterday. Not for gold. If you are a gold person and you call 1-800-221-7694, Nick and his team will take care of you. As much gold as you buy, the more you buy, the lower the commission. And it's very straightforward. It's very honest. And this morning, gold dropped down to $2,634 an ounce. Hadn't been that low in a long time. $2,634 an ounce. If you want to buy a lot of gold, you've been waiting for a year end, you've been waiting for a bonus check, whatever, 1-800-221-7694. The Dow went down 2.58%. It's a big drop. The S&P went down 2.95%. Bigger drop. The NASDAQ went down 3.5%. Biggest drop. Gold dropped a little bit. The 10-year Treasury, the cost to borrow money, went up 4.523%, because the Fed is clearly saying inflation is a problem. It's still a problem. Don't be spending this kind of money. Now, I think the Fed is neutral on tax cuts, but they are not neutral on big giveaways. They do not want to see more debt spending, unless it is connected to true, genuine productivity increases, not giveaways. You know what they also did yesterday? They put a congressional pay raise into the CR. It's insane. When you have a problem and we haven't raised Congress's pay in 10 years or 15 years or something. I think there's a good argument for giving them a pay raise. But when you do it in secret in the dead of night, you're asking to have the bill sink. It's like, maybe it's because I've been doing this forever, since 1990. I have seen this done again and again on a state and a local level and on a federal level. If you're going to pay yourself more, and there's a case for that, inflation hits members of Congress too, and they often have to keep up to residents. They sleep in their offices when they're in town and they go home to their district on the weekend. If you're going to have to do it, hang a lantern on your problem. Old-time cliche from politics. I read it first in Chris Matthews' Hardball many, many years ago, but a lot of people quote it to me as having a source. But when you have a problem, hang a lantern on it. Tell everyone right out front. First thing, Mike Johnson or Hakeem Jeffries ought to have said 3 weeks ago, we're going to do a CR and we're putting a pay raise in it. So just get used to it. We're putting a pay raise in it. And, well, whatever they did, it collapsed. And with that collapse and with the Fed's remarks, markets tumbled. Gold didn't, $2,634 an ounce. You want to call Nick and his team? 1-800-221-7694. But markets went down. You want to know how far markets can go? We're going to find out right now, unless Democrats come to their sense. I understand. They're going into the wilderness. And I have a new Fox News column today. How long will the Democrats' exile last? Now, the last time they had a president as bad as Joe Biden, it was Jimmy Carter. And his exile, and the Democrats' exile, lasted 12 years. They hired Charles Manat, and he became the chairman of the DNC. Good guy. Tried to hire me once to go to work for his law firm. I turned him down, but I like Charles a lot. For a Democrat, nice guy. Good lawyer. Then they hired Paul Kirk, another good lawyer, for another 4 years. Then they hired Ron Brown, who was an entrepreneur and a fixer. I think he was also a lawyer. And he got Bill Clinton elected. It took 12 years after Jimmy Carter for the Democrats to get back. And it wasn't just Bill Clinton. It was Ross Perot threw in, and George H.W. Bush broke his pledge on no new taxes and looked at his watch in a debate. And so after 12 years, the Democrats got another shot with a minority president, a plurality president, a third-party candidate, Ross Perot, hated George H.W. Bush, and we were off to the races on spending a peace dividend we wish we hadn't spent, because now we have the Chi-Coms to deal with. So ever since then, I've thought, don't ever let inflation get away, or it will destroy whichever party. It really destroyed the Democrats. It's done it again. People hate inflation. They hate it because it's a tax on everyone, and everyone goes to the grocery store and they come back with one box of gingerbread men and not two, because you can't afford 2 boxes of gingerbread men, or whatever it is. I'm not making light of families that can't even afford milk and cheese. Here's the deal. Congress, pass a clean CR, skinny it down, make it work until the end of January or February, and then go to work on the big budget and reconciliation package and do one. Just do one. And put everything into it, because this is too precarious. You've got to go down to Mar-a-Lago with a couple of members of the House and a couple of members of the Senate, and they got to deal with Susie Wiles and Mike Waltz and President Trump and J.D. Vance and maybe Elon Musk, all in a room, 10 of you, and you just decide on the big beams in the budget bill that will unlock reconciliation. A CR with nothing in it, just nothing. We're going to keep the government open, and if the government closes, it's not the end of the world, people. Really, in the end of the world, we've done this many times. If they can't get there, fine. But it's clear, it is very, very clear. Democrats overreached. And they overreached in such a way as to astonish Republicans. And Speaker Johnson just got one set of, he just wants to get to January. That's all he wants to do. I'm not mad at Speaker Johnson. Not mad at Steve Scalise. I'm not mad at anybody. I'm not mad at the Freedom Caucus for criticizing it or the liberals for criticizing it. The farmers did well. The submarine people did well. And then Democrats got a windfall. And Big Pharma did well. I can't believe that. Go to pharmawindfall.com. The last thing we need to do is what Big Pharma wants done. in a CR. I was kind of astonished, but it's over now. It's done. They built the house. It fell apart. Now it's in rubble. Now they pass a quick, clean CR, go home for Christmas, and come back and pass one budget with one reconciliation that goes big, and then you can go home for 2 years and win re-election. It really is that simple. Reminding you, it is only a week until Christmas, and I really need your help with our children at Angel Tree. $30 from you provides a present to a child whose mother or father is in jail, in prison, has been for a while. Angel Tree connects a child's wish list with that parent. They go visit the parent with the kid's wish list. They pick out a present. The Angel Tree volunteer buys it. The Angel Tree volunteer wraps it and delivers it on Christmas morning with a Bible and a note from mom or dad. It's a wonderful thing. Every year, thousands of you step up, and some of you intend to, but you've been busy because it's Christmas season. Thank you in advance. The banner to do so is over at hughhewitt.com. Now, I don't understand why Joe Biden is doing podcasts, but he did a podcast yesterday, More Perfect Union with Faiz Shakir. And poor Joe, cut number 5.
One thing that we haven't been able to change yet, and it's starting to change, is that you go to a grocery store, dozen eggs, a gallon of milk, a pound of bacon, still costs more than it did before the pandemic. That's a lot of money for people. It's taken time to change that.
So, grocery prices are high. How many of you think Joe Biden has been in a grocery store since the pandemic? I mean, just wandered into the market to buy something. I myself never go to the grocery store unless we're out of absolutely everything and the fetching Mrs. Hewitt is gone. I hate them. I don't know where anything is, can't find anything, and all I want is a frozen pizza. And then you find the frozen pizza, and there are 50 kinds of frozen pizza. So I don't like grocery stores. And Joe Biden doesn't go to them either. But he continues on. He's worried about high prices for the first time ever. I really don't understand what he's doing here. Cut number 6.
You know, I don't know how you look your constituents in the eye and know because the job they gave you an inside track to make more money.
I have no idea. I think he might be talking about the ban on insider trading, which would be a good thing, but it's really, I really do not know who is this a sign of life video? Cut number 7.
I think we're going to have a comeuppance now. We have a real contrast to be made. What I did in 4 years, what's going to happen in the next 4 years.
Well, you betcha there's a real contrast. Just contrast that podcast with Donald Trump's presser earlier this week. Boy, is there a real contrast. Overnight, by the way, the Israelis just blasted the Houthis. Cut number 10, Daniel Hagari at the IDF press conference.
Over the last 14 months, the Iran-backed Houthi terror regime in Yemen has launched hundreds of missile and UAV attacks against the state of Israel. This happened again tonight. The Houthi terror regime fired a missile towards central Israel, forcing millions of civilians to take cover in bomb shelters. In the last 2 weeks only, the Houthis fired a drone that hit an apartment block in southern Israel, and on Sunday they fired a long-range missile towards central Israel. The Houthis have been carrying out attacks against Israel in violation of international law, and the Houthi regime is a threat to peace and security in the region. Today, the IDF conducted precise strikes on Houthi military targets in Yemen, including ports and energy infrastructures in Sana'a, which the Houthis have been using in ways that effectively contributed to their military actions.
So what he's saying is we leveled the remaining Houthi infrastructure. The port of Sana'a is now closed. It's blown up. And that's what happens when you shoot missiles at Israel. Are the Houthis going to get a clue? I don't know. Israel's been very patient with them. They know it's an Iranian proxy, but that's it. Want to go to the inauguration? We're running a contest, Salem Media is. You have to text the name Trump, T-R-U-M-P, to 94878. That's all you have to do. Trump, 94878. One lucky winner will receive a trip for 2 to Washington, D.C., tickets to the Trump inauguration, and tickets to an inaugural ball. So if you've never done that, look, I don't know how many people are entering. I really don't. That I don't monitor the incoming texts, but I want you to know that you're not going to go unless you enter. So enter by sending Trump to 94878. All right, here's my phone number, 1-800-520-1234. You know, I don't often take phone calls, but I am curious as to your reaction to the collapse of the CR. The government shuts down tomorrow night at midnight. And that's not the end of the world. The essential government employees still go to work and they get paid whenever they come back. And it might be 6 or 8 weeks. And I'll tell you what, it would be an interesting test as to who ought to be fired. A, if you don't show up during an essential employee drill, then you're not essential. B, to the government, DOJ gets a little roadmap, a kind of a litmus test as to whether or not they ought to shut your department down. If no one's showing up during a government shutdown and nobody notices, that's a good indication that maybe there are too many people at the Department of Transportation. And, you know, if the National Endowment for the Humanities and the National Endowment for the Arts shutter, I'm not sure anyone's going to notice at all. And so we're going to have a government shutdown because it takes 60 votes to pass the CR. The Democrats want a bunch of stuff. As I said, they want a big pharma bailout. Big pharma never let a crisis go to waste. But our friends for Americans for Prosperity are on the ramparts. AFP has been a sponsor of my show for years. Akash Chogali joins me occasionally, not here today, but I'm telling you, you ought to be a member of Americans for Prosperity. They got our Congress elected, the new Congress, which doesn't take its seat until January 3rd. Like the new senators, Dave McCormick and Bernie Moreno and Tim Sheehy, they don't show up until January 3rd. Jim Justice from West Virginia, he doesn't show up until January 3rd. So a new Senate shows up on January 3rd. It's a majority Republican, so we don't need Chuck Schumer anymore to bring a bill to the floor. But you still need 60 votes to pass a CR. So we might not have a CR. Just go right to the budget. Pass the budget and the resolution and then an omnibus. There are 4 different ways to fund the government. Continuing resolution is the worst. After that, you got a minibus. That's, okay, just keep spending what you're spending, and we're going to add on a couple of pieces of legislation here and there. Then you have an omnibus, which is one giant bill that rolls in all the spending and all the details and all the legislative changes for the rest of the fiscal year to the end of September. And everybody hates omnibuses, minibuses, which they tried this week. Most people don't like minibuses either. And then you've got regular order where you pass the appropriation bills. Well, that's really what the Republicans ought to do, is sit down, go to work, figure out how much each of the bills are going to be, pass a budget that includes the tax cuts, the border wall, the defense buildup, the energy and the housing authorizations, all the stuff that Trump wants that he ran on. Put it all into one budget, one reconciliation package, and then pass an omnibus based on it. And if Trump's behind it, it will pass. What do you folks think? Let's talk with Chris in Tucson, Arizona. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Hugh. Merry Christmas to you and your staff.
Thank
and
you.
Why can't, since Congress' main job is to pass a budget and to disperse funds, Hugh, why can't they have a rule that you're only allowed to get a pay raise when you balance the budget?
Well, they can have that rule, but they're never going to have that rule because they can't balance the budget, and they are going to pay themselves. Elected officials are just self-interested people like everybody else. Everybody's self-interested. They've got families. I understand. I cannot understand trying to not tell anyone you're going to do a pay hike and then drop it. It's like the dumbest political move I've seen in a long time. I have to assume Hakeem Jeffries was behind it. But, Chris, there is no rule that they can't make that, but they'll never make it. Thank you, friend. Mike in Wisconsin. Good morning, Mike. How cold is it up there?
It's cold, but not as cold as it is in the House of Representatives this morning, Hugh. You know, we conservatives often say that Democrats are tone deaf to the will of the majority of the American people. This is an example of our own side being tone deaf to the will of the American people, given the results of the last election. And I think it will backfire on them because Musk and Trump and Doge and Vivek will hold firm on this and show that they are serious about making these reforms. Let's hope that they do.
Well, that would mean shutting the government down, which does not bother me. Does not bother me shutting it down for 40 days. and working very hard to find what the president-elect wants. Doesn't matter what Vivek wants and Alon wants and Stephen Miller wants and Susie Wiles wants and Mike Waltz wants. They'll have input. But what does the president want? What will he bless? And Mike Johnson and John Thune should just basically live at Mar-a-Lago, take Christmas off, then fly down there, hammer it out, get it done, pass the package. As soon as you get back on January 3rd, it's a budget and a reconciliation will trail, and it can be waiting for the president when he's sworn in on January 21st. They can keep the government shuttered until January 20th. The world will not end if they do that. All right? The world will not end. Thank you. Mike, I appreciate it. John in Pittsburgh. Hello, John. You're on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Hey, Hugh. Every time any of us conservatives and you folks in the media are conservative are talking about DOGE and expenses of the government, we have to mention the federal budget is now $6.7 trillion. It's hard to fathom. But in 2019, it was $4.4 trillion.
Yeah, and the debt is $36 trillion, national debt.
And revenue, listen, tax revenue right now is $4.7 trillion. If we could just...
It's an astonishing amount of money. I understand that. And I don't know. I am not a member of Congress. I do believe that pathway evolution drives everything. Self-interest and pathway evolution. Pathway evolution is you end up in a certain place because of minor changes taken along the way. So we are in this situation again. We've been in government shutdown mode for 15 years, and we're not going to get out of it until we actually grow out of it, which is why they ought to get the tax cuts done in one budget done. It really would not bother me if we shutter the government for 60 days. Your Social Security keeps coming, your Medicare keeps paying your insurance. Some government employees don't get paid, some do. Everyone eventually gets the money made up. I hope they have a little savings on hand, because unless the Democrats cooperate, there isn't going to be a clean CR, and they don't want to. Chris in Pittsburgh, go ahead, Chris. What do you think?
Hey, good morning, Hugh. I'm with you. I've been with you since day one on this. I can live without a docent at a state park for the next 60 days. And like you said, everybody gets paid when it ends. They all collect unemployment in the interim. I just don't think that signing this mess is the right thing to do. Pass the bare minimum, get us to the new president and the new Congress, and then move forward with the mandate that was given to them in November.
And if they can't pass the bare minimum, shutter the government by January 3rd. And that's what's interesting. Mike Johnson may have played it very shrewdly. He may have figured out, we're not going to pass this. I'll take the hit, but I'll take it. And then we'll clear the decks and we'll do one big... Who knows? I don't know. Dennis in Utah. Hi, Dennis. You're on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Hey, Hugh Hewitt. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas
How's
to you.
Genghis Kate?
Well, Genghis Kate has recovered. She's off the floor of the bathroom.
There we go. You've got this, Hugh. You've got some wonderful listeners. I just had my 67th birthday. I thought I'd call once a year.
Happy birthday. And he went away. Oh, well.
And I'm still here.
Oh, okay, well, go ahead, Dennis. Happy birthday.
Thank you. No, you've got some excellent callers. I can't add much to it.
Well, I appreciate the call. Thank you, Dennis. Stay warm in Utah. Brian in Oklahoma. Good morning, Brian. I hope you go with me to the afternoon. I'm not sure if that affiliate's taking me to the afternoon. I sure hope so. I love talking to Oklahoma.
Morning, Hugh. Hey, I just had a quick, a little bit of input on the whole government shutdown, maybe living without, a paycheck for, maybe, one or two cycles of, people's pay. I mean, I could see your point, but I also have to just mention that why would we think that that's okay for some people living paycheck to paycheck in this hard economy?
I don't want that. I think the CR should pass. They need Democrats to pass the CR. The Democrats wanted it loaded up with special interest bills. Mike Johnson went along with what he called a minibus, keep it as narrow as possible. It was still $1.5 trillion, And it still shocked people, especially the pay raise. So it fell apart. So all they have to do is say levels as they are, extend them until January 28th, and we'll get the work done in the new Congress. But that requires Democrat support in the Senate, and they don't want that. This is their last chance at the apple. They get nothing after January 3rd. They're in the minority. They get nothing at all. So they're going to complain and moan. And you know what? I'm just trying to tell you, Republicans ought to say, okay, we gave you a shot, and you demanded too much, and our people won't go for it. And the president-elect is the president-elect, and he's got to buy whatever we're selling. Thank you, my friend. I hope I do stay on in Oklahoma City. I love that affiliate. It's like Las Vegas. If Las Vegas moves me to the afternoon, I can go to work. Beginning on January 13th, the Hugh Hewitt Show moves to 3 to 6 p.m. in the East, noon to 3 in the West. That's the live broadcast. It will be taped delayed other places. If you're upset by that, head over to YouTube, Google Hugh Hewitt, like and subscribe the Hugh Hewitt Show. Because every day we post at the end the show shorn of all the ads, and you can wake up with me anyway. All you have to do is subscribe and like at YouTube. And we're up at 75,000 followers, which is great over there. A lot of people like news. They like the way I approach this, which is center right. I'm not here to chew on people's legs. I'm here to just tell you the facts. And the facts of the matter is Democrats are going to shut down the government because they want too much on their going out the door farewell, and Republicans aren't going to give it to them. They tried, and Republicans rebelled, and that's the end of that. Shutdown time, unless Democrats wake up to the reality that Donald Trump won. Joined in Israel by Dr. Michael Oren. It's easy for me to talk to Israelis during this period of time, but when I move to the afternoons, Dr. Oren, I hope you can move with me and stay up late. I am hoping you will explain for the audience, if you will. Netanyahu's on trial. And I don't know if it's a big deal or a little deal, or if it's a procedural, is it traffic court? What is it? How important is it, and how's it going?
And the answer to that is nobody knows. And I've been following this trial and these accusations for it must be close to a decade now, and still can't make heads or tails of them definitively. Yesterday, of course, something very interesting happened. The judges basically threw out a huge portion of the prosecution's case and the most serious accusations against Netanyahu. That's a attempt to sort of accused attempt, allegedly, to manipulate the media, bribery, those most serious charges. And the judges say, hey, to the prosecution, your evidence just won't hold order. And the defending attorney stood up and said, hey, you don't have a case. You simply can't make your case. And that could well be it. That could be well it. Other people will say, hey, this is very serious. And Netanyahu, if he doesn't play his cards right, could end up in prison. Nobody knows. I think the major issue is here we have a country at war. Still on multiple fronts. Last night, 2:00 in the morning, we were woken up by an air raid siren as Israel was targeted by yet another ballistic missile from Yemen. 2:30 in the morning, we're running for our bomb shelter. And here we have a prime minister spending hours in court every day defending himself. The Supreme Court turned down his request to delay the proceedings, at least until after the war. Can you make heads or tails of this? Everything. Is sui generis.
Well, does Israel have the same presumption of innocence and the same high standard of beyond a reasonable doubt that America does, Dr. Oren?
It does. I mean, I think we have a world-class judicial system. What we don't have is, in many ways, institutions that are as transparent as you have in the United States. I'll give you a good example. The Academy Awards has nominated, one of the nominations for the best foreign films, documentaries of the year is a film about the Netanyahus that was produced in Canada. It is not allowed to be shown in Israel, believe it or not. Why is it not allowed to be shown? It contains footage of 2.5 hours of police interrogation of the Netanyahu family and interrogations related to these cases. Now, think, that means somebody in the police leaked 2.5 hours of classified interrogations of the Netanyahu family. It was made into a film, and now that film could get an Academy Award. Now, in any other country, I'm not an expert, I'm not a jurist, but see, that would result in an immediate mistrial. And that would result in a major investigation of the police, how this happened, why there was this leak. And in Israel, not even a whimper.
I think it's nuts that you're at war, especially when you've got al-Nusra taking over Damascus. And to me, this is the real issue: is do you have any feel for whether or not Jelani is just a jihadi with a better beard, or is he actually a stable figure for Syria? Do you have any idea yet?
I think a stable, I hope he is, but let's say I think a stable figure for Israel is a large sort of oxymoron. And I think that Syria, it was a country created by the Europeans to serve European interests. It sort of cobbled together various ethnic, religious, and tribal groups into this sort of morass. And every time there is an absence of very central, brutal power, it begins to unravel. And if Jelani, the only way he's not going to be able to, I don't think he's going to be able to conciliate all these disparate factions within Syria without exerting tremendous amounts of force and being again a very brutal leader indeed. If he's not going to do that, then Syria will begin to sort of dissipate. And there are already Druze villages that want to be part of Israel. There are Christians who want to be part of Lebanon. There are Kurds who want to be part of Turkey. There are other Kurds who want to be independent. I don't hear a lot of people saying, I want to be Syrian, really. And this notion of an Alawite independent state around the port of Latakia. So
did the Russians leave? Did the Russians skedaddle?
Yeah, the Russians really weren't there that much. There was only about 1,000 Russian troops there, and seven planes is what they had left. 7 operational planes. So it wasn't very much to skedaddle. And there are a lot of reports in the news this week that the Iranians turned down Assad's request for asylum, and it was the Russians who gave it to them. And there's even a report today that Israel facilitated Assad's escape in return for a map showing where all his strategic arsenals were located.
Oh. All right, now I want to close on this.
That's true. It's a great story if it is true.
But I really want to figure out.
Go ahead. Let's get a hoot
where,
for the Houthis.
When do we? I already covered the Houthis, and they're going to regret every missile they send at Israel. But when does this trial get over? I mean, the judge in charge of the trial must realize this is absurd. Only Israel could have their prime minister on trial during a 7-front war that it's winning.
Yeah, the flip side of that, we're very confident of ourselves that we can actually afford to do this. And before the war, we could have this tremendous divisions over the judicial reform because we thought where we live. We thought somehow we lived in Sweden or in the Bay Area. We forgot that we live in the Middle East. Unfortunately, Hamas did not forget, not for a second.
Ambassador Michael Oren, good to check in with you. Hopefully this time next week, Benjamin Netanyahu will no longer be in the dock, and the Houthis will no longer be trying to fire missiles at Israel because the cost is too high. Thank you, Dr. Michael Oren. Joined by Noah Rothman, senior writer for National Review. And Noah is riding along in the back of a car going downtown to talk to Fox News, probably. Good morning, Noah. How are you?
Good morning. I'm very well. You got me right.
Okay. Well, look, I want to run down. I had a revelation this week, 2, in fact. I had lunch with a very senior member of Legacy Media, not on our team, Noah, not on Team Red, on Team Blue. Very senior, very good friend, known him a long time. And he was unaware that Commentary did a podcast 5 days a week. He had never heard of the Ruthless podcast. He didn't know about the editors or the McCarthy Report or Getting Hammered. He didn't know about Megyn Kelly. Didn't listen to Megyn Kelly. Didn't listen to Dwayne's World. I mean, just generally unaware of our world. Then I had Senator Coons on yesterday, and this is on the record, so I can tell you this one. He didn't know any of the podcasts I listened to as well. And I didn't even get into my sports podcast. Terry's Talking, Orange and Brown podcast, Wine and Gold. Forget the sports podcast. I don't expect. But I only have 8 podcasts, and my world does not collide with Chris Coons' world or unnamed senior executive of Blue Media world. What's that tell you?
Well, first of all, I'm surprised by Megyn Kelly. I mean, I don't suspect that anybody in our world, maybe you're kind of mainstream, but some of us have pretty niche appeal. The editors, the Dispatch, even Commentary. We're talking to a self-selected audience, a very influential audience, but nevertheless, 60,000, 70,000 people on a podcast. That's still a niche audience, but Megyn Kelly draws millions, and she was mainstream news. So to not be aware of the fact that she transitioned over to podcasts and is doing incredible numbers and has reinvented herself and made herself into a personality. That's kind of weird, especially if you're in the media business. I mean, this is where the money's at.
Isn't it kind of weird if you are the leader of part of a flagship operation not to even know that Ruthless exists? Ruthless is probably the most influential podcast.
Or let's just say you're really corporate and you're not looking for niche stuff. You want mass appeal, you want millions per episode. What is Fox News Digital doing? Fox News Digital is out there hunting for big podcasts to add to its stable in order to capture that audience. You should be aware of this trend in your business because it is the trend in your business. So I'm struggling with that one. I can't imagine that there's no knowledge of what the podcast landscape is like, and if there isn't,
there isn't. Noah, call up any of your friends. You've got friends in Blue Media, right?
Less than I'd used to. But there was a time when, yes, I had a lot of friends over at MSNBC, for example, and elsewhere.
Well, find any one of your Blue Media friends or any of your just Democratic friends, they don't have to be in the media, and ask them if they listen to Ruthless and the Editor. That's sort of like it's like me listening to Pod Save America. I got to know what the other team thinks. And I really was shocked that Chris Coons, who's a very center-left guy, I mean, he's a normal Democrat, spends too much money 2 weeks at home, but he's a normal Democrat, isn't even aware of our world. And our world is genuinely center-right kind of mainstream conservatism, right?
Yeah, well, that's how I would describe myself. And even if you're, Ruthless guys are great, but they're a little provocative. They like to tug on threads and jab you in the elbows. And we and the editors do that a little bit less. Dispatch commentary do that a little bit less. So that's more palatable to a center-left audience if you're just looking to see what the right actually thinks, unless you don't want to know what the right actually thinks. Unless you think deep down that's a fool's errand.
That is exactly what they don't care. They don't want to know. They're not going to try and get. And for years, you could get by in America by reading the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, the New York Times, and then catching a nightly newscast, and you'd be up to speed. But we're in two worlds now, and if you're not even attempting to listen, I think you're doomed. And these are well produced. I always tell people Ruthless podcast is NC-17, the editors is PG-13. But you're talking about the same stuff because they're McConnellists, right? You guys at National Review are not bomb-throwing revolutionaries. You're very mainstream conservatives, but you're conservatives.
Yeah, and a lot of us aren't necessarily McConnellists. I mean, I don't think I would count myself among the more establishmentarian sort, but we have plenty who are much more disruptive and inclined towards populist.
Yeah, you do have Dominic, and you've got Mike MBD.
Pretty much looks a lot like what the podcast.
Yeah, Charles C.W. Cook is actually just a younger version of me and with a better accent, and he knows more. But that's his politics, and I don't know where you are, Noah. But I'm just curious, you think we're going to ever talk to each other again? This is an uber end-of-the-year conversation. I don't think the political class has a common ground anymore.
Well, and that's a scary prospect. I sure hope they do. I would imagine that, there's the centrifugal force of politics when it actually starts happening again in the new year will compel us to negotiate with each other and therefore comprehend or at least attempt to comprehend what our mutual demands are and then come to a consensus. That's how politics in this country works. We engage and we didn't talk about the CR explosion today, and I wish we did because it's case
We're going
in
to.
point. We engage in a fantasy. We indulge in this fantasy every so often where we can control the levers of government by ourselves, our party. We don't need the other party. We don't have to negotiate spending bills with the other party. But for the will, if we can just summon the will, we will reshape the political landscape and change a dynamic and cast our opponents off into the wilderness forever. It never works out that way. And eventually we come around to the delusion, recognizing the delusion as delusion. But it takes some time to get there.
But no, this CR was a last gasp effort to get the Democrats and the Republicans in a room. It was a four corners effort: Schumer, McConnell, Johnson, and Jeffries. And what they came up with, 1,500 pages, isn't going anywhere because they missed the moment, right? This is not the moment for a minibus. It's the moment for a Spartan CR with a debt limit raise and nothing else, and then get your budget done, your reconciliation done, and your appropriations bill done. And by the way, Noah, every person in America has to make deadlines. I don't understand why Congress can't make deadlines.
Yeah, well, they make deadlines when the deadline is upon them. Um, so yeah, you're right to not call this a CR. That's a misnomer. A minibus is more appropriate. It was full of a bunch of garbage that have nothing to do with a CR, which can be a one-page bill. But there's also stuff in there that everybody wants and frankly needs, like disaster relief and the stuff like $30 billion for farmers. There's stuff that people like in there, and it's going to be easy to demagogue if it fails. And the thing about spending bills is they need to be bipartisan. You have to have buy-in from the other party. And if you wanted to, for example, raise the debt ceiling, that's a 60-vote threshold in the Senate, which is what Donald Trump now wants to do. You got to get a buy-in from the other party. And what Elon Musk said yesterday, and apparently, by the way, this was not an issue when Johnson and Trump, by the way, went to the Army-Navy game or talked to each other over the course of the last week, that this deal was pretty much a done deal until it got in the hands of the Doge team. And the Doge team said, well, this is full of garbage. We don't like this. And nobody likes it because it's a trashy CR minibus. But they killed it, said there shouldn't be any bills. And indeed, if we shut down the government, that'll be great because conservatives, people don't understand how little they need the government. And once it's gone, the scales will fall from their eyes and everybody will become small government conservatives. It never works out that way. This is something that
But no, it
conservatives
could
have
work
told
this way.
themselves for decades. For decades, they've told themselves that this is how it's going to play out, and it never does. In fact, it usually redounds to the benefit of the other party when the government shuts down.
I disagree with that. I think the Cruz-originated shutdown in 07 actually worked for us in the off years or in 05. Worked in the off year of 06, or I can't remember what it was. No, here's what I think is going to happen, and it doesn't upset me. Government's going to shut down probably for 45 days. A budget and a reconciliation package must pass, and a omnibus along with it with a debt hike, all in one big bill that uses reconciliation and passes because it's a simple majority vote in the Senate. And the government will be shuttered for 2 months, except for essential employees. Will anyone notice, except for the people who are furloughed?
Yeah, I'm not nearly as sanguine as you are about that, Hugh. There will be every incentive to demagogue the heck out of that. Every military family who doesn't get a paycheck ahead of Christmas will be front and center in the media. Everything that the Democrats can do to make that painful in the executive office will be done. And once Donald Trump comes in, they will start feeling a lot of pressure to move in the Democrats' direction to reopen the government. And that will mean concessions from Republicans that I don't want, that you don't want. I think that's a really risky play. And it's depending on a compliant press that'll retail a Republican narrative reliably. I think that's a foolish bet.
Well, I began with the fact that there's an alternative media for a reason. I don't think the press matters on this. If Johnson and Trump speak clearly and say, we have a deal to fund the government, to fund the military families, to fund the essential stuff, but the Democrats won't pass it because they want junk, they win that messaging war. I really do think people are willing to hear that, Noah, and you're skeptical. Last word to you.
I'm skeptical. I'm willing to see it and be surprised, but I would be surprised because it would depart from past practice.
Well, we will see. Noah Rothman, follow him on X at Noah C. Rothman. Enjoyed your ride into town this morning, Noah. Noah C. Rothman of National Review. I'm not sure the CR has collapsed. I think it's going to. Enough people blasted it overnight, including President-elect Trump, Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, the Doge people, number of members of the Freedom Caucus, and then the public found out that Congress was giving itself a pay raise. And I thought, as soon as I saw that last night, I said, oh, this thing is dead. Dead. What are they going to do? And so there are three ways forward. Government runs out of money tomorrow night, midnight. The government can shutter, except for essential employees who have to work without pay. And you're right, Noah Rothman is right. If the families of the military do not get paid, there is going to be hell to pay. So Johnson can do one of two things. He can pass the CR with Democratic votes, and they'll vote for it. It's 1,500 pages long. I mean, 1,500 pages, kind of a giveaway. 1,500 pages, you don't know what's in it. And he can either pull the bill and put a bare bones CR with a debt limit on the floor, where you can put a bare bones CR with no debt limit on the floor. He can do whatever he wants. It doesn't really matter if the government closes. If we get close enough, they could pass a CR with just the military in it, which would be smart to do, the submarine money that was there. They could possibly get that through. But it's up to the Democrats. Democrats are demanding a bunch of stuff because Democrats are leaving the majority in the Senate. It's the last time they get to obstruct any deal that Republicans can agree on. Now, that's a big if, agree on, because the Republican majority is 5. It's going to go to 2, and that will slowly rebuild to 5. But when it gets down to 2, it could vanish. Takes one person changing sides like Jim Jeffords did in 1981 to totally screw it up. It takes a car crash. Stuff happens, acts of God. So what ought they to do? Bare bones CR, get their work done, come back on January 2nd, go to Mar-a-Lago, you get President-elect Trump, Elon Musk, Mike Waltz, and Susie Wiles in a room together with maybe Russ Vought, who's the OMB director, and Johnson and his team come down, and Thune and his team come down, and they fashion the budget reconciliation. They pass it all with an omnibus, a big spending bill, but one that Trump blesses, and a debt limit hike, and they put it all together into a budget resolution, and they get it all done. They go to work. And this is what most Americans don't understand, and what upsets them about politics is all of you have to finish. Yesterday I was talking with, or I sent a note off to the accountant at my parent corporation saying, okay, I need end of year numbers, and she's not there, probably not back till next week. So I'm kind of floating around here because we do have to wrap up the end of the year. Right now, law firms are meeting across the country to distribute the end of the year. They got to close their books. Only the government closes their books on September 30th. The rest of us out there in normal land, the vast majority of us close our books on on December 30th. And you try and get everything out the door so you get your deductions in this tax year, and you try and get paid in the next tax year so you don't have to pay taxes for 15 months. But there are deadlines. And everybody makes deadlines in the world except Congress. So here's the deal. Mike Johnson, talk to people. Come out and hold a press conference and say, we're doing a CR. It's got nothing in it except a down limit height. Everyone gets the same amount of money, and there's no pay raise. And it will pass. It will pass. Please remember, over at Angel Tree, I would need you to go there and make a $30 contribution to a kid. Thank you for doing that. And also, please remember to go and get this book, Dawn's Early Light. One of our sponsors, the Heritage Foundation, Kevin Roberts, who wrote this book, is the author of Dawn's Early Light. And I have a great interview with Kevin on YouTube. You go over to YouTube, Hugh Hewitt. You can find it. It's probably Tuesday of this week, 20 minutes long. And it's a great introduction to this book, Dawn's Early Light. But this is the book to give to your friends who are in the middle or who don't follow politics and really want to understand what the arguments are all about. Roberts lays it out. Kevin Roberts, Dawn's Early Light. This is the book. This is the person that you need. You can get a whole bunch of government consolidation mapped out just by reading Dawn's Early Light. You can figure out how to have a family-friendly government just by reading Dawn's Early Light. But you got to go to Amazon. You got to order it today if you want it in time for Christmas. It's a great Christmas present, and it's red, so it will match the decor of Christmas Day. Dawn's Early Light at Amazon by Kevin Roberts. I'm inside the Beltway where everything is in a shambles. Train wreck day yesterday. Speaker Mike Johnson, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, and Mitch McConnell and their teams negotiated a 1,500-page continuing resolution because the government runs out of money tomorrow night. And this thing was released, and the instant and overwhelming reaction was to vomit it back. I think it's dead. Now, I've often thought things were dead in D.C. that aren't dead. They're zombie and they come back out of the grave, but I think this is pretty dead. And because they put in a congressional pay raise. There are very few things that people understand. They understand congressional pay raises. They cannot be hidden from people. They know what you are making. They know that you tried to give yourself a 15 or a 20% pay hike, and they're not going for it. Because you didn't tell anyone you were going to do it. And if you're going to do a pay raise, you have to hang a lantern on the problem, and you have to tell people 6 months in advance, at the end of the year, we're going to raise the pay. At the end of the year, we're going to do this. At the end of the year, we're going to do that. And you have to prepare people, and no surprises. You can't surprise people because X is X. Everything is instantly known by everyone. Now, here is the underlying problem. Nobody trusts nobody about nothing. And that goes for conservatives and liberals and people in the middle. Nobody trusts nobody about nothing. Now, you can gain trust. I have a pretty good high Q. Not IQ, high Q. Q is a rating in the industry for believability, trustworthiness, general reliability, and I have a high Q. My guess is that the individual with the highest Q, who's on TV every day, Q rating, is Brett Baer. I think Brett is without question the most trusted news figure in America. So, and I'm Brett adjacent, so I'm pretty trusted. And there are some lefties who are lefty adjacent on the other side of Brett that you might trust. I'm not going to name anyone because you'll all be mad at me. But there are some lefties that you kind of trust, that they're telling you the truth. And I tell you, what the political world hadn't figured out yet is that Trump is in charge. And you really got to get Trump's buy-in and Trump's lieutenants' buy-in, or their willingness to wait for the president-elect. He's in charge for probably 6 months. Then it will shatter. No coalition stays together for longer than 6 months. So you saw Trump on Monday or Tuesday with the press conference, and he was fabulous and in command. And nobody at the back of the room, because the media is dummies, they didn't ask him, do you want one bill or two bill on the reconciliation, and do you want anything else in the CR except the CR and the debt limit? But, you know, I can't be everywhere. I can't talk to him every day. I can't have him on the program every day. It's pretty easy. They needed to get guidance from him that was explicit and on point, and it wasn't gotten, and therefore Team Speaker Johnson's a good team of people, smart people. They're kind of feeling in the dark, and they're trying to get through a maze, and there are a bunch of people who need things like the submarine money we needed and the Farm Bill money we needed, and Democrats wanted A, B, and C, and they didn't want D, E, and F, and they negotiated, and they lost sight of the fact that nobody believes anybody in D.C. about anything. Now, how do you build trust? If I were Speaker Johnson today, literally, if I were him, I would call up Josh Holmes or one of the fellows at Ruthless Podcast and say, guys, I want you to hold an emergency podcast. I'm going to come over and tell you where we are, because serious conservatives listen to Ruthless. Then I would call up the Commentary Podcast and say, guys, you never have guests other than Noah Rothman, but I'd like to be on your podcast. You would do the same with the editors. You would do the same with Mary Catherine Ham and Vic Mattis on Getting Hammered. You would call up Megyn Kelly. And you would go, I don't think you'd call me back. Dan Senor is national security and Israel affairs. But you might call me. You might call Dwayne for Dwayne's World. You would be on my radio show, and you would do Highly Concentrated Hugh. And you would be very open about what's going on. Okay, here's what happened. We thought we had to do A, B, and C, and the Democrats wanted D, E, and F, and so we put A, B, and C, and D, E, and F together, and nobody likes it, everybody hates it, let's all just eat glue. And we made a mistake. We didn't get the Mar-a-Lago chop. And you need the Mar-a-Lago chop. The chop, for the benefit of the Inders out there, is the stamp that you put on things, a chop. And you need to put the chop on there. And there's a way to communicate with the conservative base. I just named it. Talk radio plus a half dozen podcasts. That's all you need to do. And you might go on Brett Baer, talk to Brett for an hour. You might talk to Sean later in the night. And then you've covered the bases, and the conservative movement knows what's going on. And this is the fault of the Democrats. And you say, look, I told them we can't do this, and we tried, and every time we wanted something that we need, like submarines, they wanted something that we don't need, like green energy something or other. I don't know what's in this bill. This bill is 1,500 pages. I'm not going to read it. It's not going to pass. So how to establish trust? I heard yesterday on the Commentary Pod, John Podhoretz began by asking people, to please go and like and subscribe to the YouTube broadcast of the Commentary Pod. I agree. I think you should like and subscribe my podcast, Highly Concentrated Hugh. I think you should like and subscribe to Dwayne's podcast, Dwayne's World. I think you should like and subscribe to Ruthless podcast, to the Commentary podcast, to the editors, to the McCarthy Report, to Getting Hammered, to Megyn Kelly, to Call Me Back, and if you like Cleveland sports, to Terry's Talking. I can't bring myself to listen to the Browns podcast right now. I do listen to the One in Gold Report with Chris Fedor and a cast of characters from the Cleveland Plain Dealer on the Cavs because they're 23-4, which is remarkable. But I listen to Terry's Talking because I trust Terry Pluto on Cleveland sports. I trust Terry, so I listen to Terry. And Terry's been doing it forever, and he tells you the truth. And if he doesn't know, he says, I doesn't know. I don't know. And that's where the world is going. Nobody trusts CNN. Nobody trusts NBC, ABC, CBS. Nobody trusts the Washington Post. Nobody trusts anybody in legacy media, the Democrats or the Republicans. Nobody trusts the media. So in a crisis of trust, you have to go to where people are trusted and talk to their audiences so that you cumulatively impact the decision makers. And you've got to get the president to do more. President-elect Trump is the guy who can drive this deal. And I got to say to the press corps at Mar-a-Lago, he was there for an hour, and whoever the ninny was that asked him about January 6th and pardons, you don't know much about government. I really do. I just think if we had a semi-skilled group of people who aren't looking for a viral moment, and they really... Steve Holland is the best reporter in town you've never heard of. Steve Holland and with Reuters. I've traveled the world with Steve Holland, with John Bolton. We went to Turkey and Israel together, and I learned so much from Steve Holland. And I see him occasionally because he lives pretty close to where I live, and I see him and I wave at him, and I thought to myself, that guy's a pro. He's a real pro. I try to be a professional. I do that without a producer, which is kind of remarkable, but I try and be professional and just tell you the news. But on this 1,500-page bill, it was very unprofessional because we didn't know there was a pay raise in it. And there it is. There's a picture if you're watching on the Salem News Channel. You can trust the Salem News Channel. You can trust Mike Gallagher. You can trust Seb Gorka. You can trust Charlie Kirk. You can trust Larry Elder. You can trust Dennis Prager when he comes back and our guests. You can always trust everybody. I don't know if you can trust Dwayne because he won't do the after show for the Tribbles. But I will say, if you're Speaker Johnson and you got to get some mojo back, it's pretty easy. Call up Comfortably Smug, call up Ruthless Podcast, any of the fellows, call up Rich Lowry and say, I want to come on National View on the editors. Call up Andy McCarthy and say, can I do Rich Lowry and Andy McCarthy and we'll talk about the bill. Call up Mary Catherine Ham and Vic Mattis to Getting Hammered. Call up Megyn Kelly. You know how Pete Hegseth is going to win being defense secretary? He went on Megyn Kelly's show. And Megyn Kelly's got this vast reach because people trust Megyn Kelly. Why do they trust her? Because NBC fired her. They trust her for the same reason. I mean, we tried to attach ourselves to legacy media and we got vomited out. Megyn in a big way, I in a small way. Because they're not interested in serious people on the right. But Mike Johnson, the Speaker Johnson, needs to go and make his case. United States Senator Jim Talent, formerly the senator from Missouri, always joins me at this time. If you like Jim, and everybody does, listen to Dwayne's World that dropped yesterday because a longer conversation with the senator. Senator, good morning. Merry Christmas to you. I would like you to tell me what you think Speaker Johnson should do now.
He has to try to pass a clean CR. And one question I would have, if you can get them on you, is did they whip a clean CR? Do they have the votes to pass it? I think this is a wake-up call for everybody. I mean, in the Congress next year, the Republicans are going to have a 2-vote majority in the House. That means, particularly in these spending bills, to pass them, you're either going to have to deal with the Democrats or you're going to have to get 100% of the Republicans, not 99%. And that means two things. You are right about transparency. They're going to have to be more open about the deals they're doing. And number two, everybody has to understand nobody gets everything they want. Everybody has to accept some things that they don't want, or this whole thing is going to fail.
Now, Senator Jason Smith, chairman of Ways and Means and a fellow Show Me State person like you, was on yesterday, and he and I agree. There should be one big budget reconciliation debt limit package that raises the amount of money we are going to spend, and it lays out the tax cuts and the border wall and the military rebuild. It's a big bill. It could be 1,500 pages long, but it only takes 50 votes in the Senate. A CR takes 60. Should we just shut the government down for 40 days until Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Speaker Johnson, and John Thune can figure it out?
No, I mean, I think it's far better, you, to pass a clean CR, even if it's short term, and then go home and come back in the next Congress and start working on the priorities. The priorities are the tax bill, energy legislation, and the border. My instinct would be very much against a fight involving shutting down the government when the priorities lie in other areas. Now, I agree with you. I don't think, particularly at this stage, it's certainly not fatal as far as the public interest is concerned, and I don't think it's fatal politically. But I think it's something very much to be avoided, and I think President Trump wants to avoid it as well.
I do too, but it takes 60 votes of Democrats in the Senate, right? They're not going to pass a clean CR.
Well, at least, yeah. But if the House passes a clean CR, and the Republicans in the Senate offer the Democrats a clean CR, and they don't take it, then it's their fault. And under those circumstances,
we're on the same page.
I don't,
we're
right.
on, they won't take it.
Right, exactly.
And so we're on the same page. And if it does close down for 40 days, if it's shut down until January 23rd, the inauguration is on the 20th, they move in on the 21st, they get organized, they have a meeting, they figure it out, and the government is shut for 40 days. How bad is it, Jim Tallon? Have you ever done a 40-day shutdown?
I don't remember how big the one was. I think in 95 it shut down. The Republican leaders feel snake bit over this because every time the government shuts down, they end up getting blamed for it. Now, I think under the circumstances we just discussed, the politics of this might work very differently, and they might come back, organized in January 3rd, pass something, and then Biden would sign it before Trump took over. I think it's very important now that the House pass a clean CR, and everybody who's objected to, even if it's short term, because there are things in this bill that important constituencies wanted. You had Zach Nunn on yesterday. He was talking about the fact his farmers are hurting. They need some relief. He can wait 30 or 60 days, okay? And that's what I would ask him. I would say, Zach, give us another 30 days, another 60 days. We'll come back then and try and do it. But if the House
our
can't
friend
pass
Jerry
anything,
Hendricks was so excited about the submarine funding. He said, I didn't like it because it didn't have the AM radio in every vehicle bill. But he said, but they got the sub funding. There were winners and losers. But you know what killed it, Senator? The pay raise. You can't do a pay raise in the dark. You just can't do that.
Completely agree. You have to be prepared. What you said, hanging a lantern on it, was very good. You have to be prepared to go out and argue for it. And I think if you do that, you will convince some people. Other people won't like it. And by the way, they need a pay raise. They haven't had one in like 15 years.
I agree.
And it isn't.
But I didn't see it coming. I said, what are you thinking?
It isn't because
who in the world thought they could do this?
None of them are suffering you, but there are people, good people, that we all would want to run for Congress who won't run for Congress because they have too many other opportunities. So you have to, the salary has to be high enough that you're not turning off a lot of potentially really good people. But you have to be open about it. And that's if you get Scalise or Johnson on, that's what I would ask. I would ask them two things. Did you whip a clean CR? Did you have the votes to pass it? And number two, why weren't you more transparent? I mean, those are tough questions, but they're questions they ought to answer because it's when you spring this on people, and there's a lot of things, particularly a pay raise, that they're not expecting. They're not going to march out there and vote for it, and that was the problem.
Oh man, Senator Tallon, how big of a role does Donald Trump have to pick up right now? We have Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy and Stephen Miller and many people of the Mar-a-Lago inner circle saying things on TV, and the press didn't ask Donald Trump the obvious thing, which is, do you want one package or two packages? So we really don't know. How much does he have to take control of this?
Well, I think he either has to show leadership on those kinds of tactical questions, and it's a very important tactical question, but it's a tactical question. It's not a policy or merits issue, right? He either has to take leadership on it, or he has to be prepared to come in behind whatever the leaders decide and support them. What he can't do is not express an opinion and not tell them what he wants and then criticize what they decide to do. That wouldn't be fair. I don't think he's going to do that. And either he is behind the scenes communicating, or what he's saying, based on his own discussions with his own people, is, look, it doesn't really matter to me. Now, I've got to tell you, Jason Smith did a pretty good job of convincing me yesterday that one bill would be a better idea. But I can't stand here and tell you that there is nothing to be said for doing two bills. If you're pretty certain you can pass two bills, say by the middle of the year, so what you're doing is you're giving up a couple of months of the tax relief, maybe, but you're achieving victory all throughout the year. One of the things you want is to be putting points on the board, having enough time to celebrate that, then putting more points on the board, celebrating that, etc. One big package gives you one thing that you can talk about. So there's something to be said for both, but Trump's either going to have to tell him what he wants, or he's going to have to back up whatever they decide.
But what this CR collapse shows me, Senator, is that the fragility of the Republican majority is far greater than anyone knows. And I know we've got a 5-vote majority right now. It's going to go down to 2 when Stefanik and Waltz, and I can't remember who the third one is, who's going in, goes in. And they'll drop down to 2. One of them is Spartz, who doesn't want to do anything. So I don't even know if they have 2. So the only way to get the bill out of the House is to have Trump threaten everyone with a primary challenge, right? I mean, that's the only way to get their attention.
Yeah, that's a tool that I suspect the president is going to use sparingly, because as time goes on, I think it's going to be less and less effective. Look, people want to support President Trump. He is the accepted leader of the party. He's popular in the country. He has enormous informal influence. I think communication, encouraging, exhorting people, asking them to support him, giving them things that they want that aren't that important. Okay, in other words, people, who knows what they want? Mr. President, can the vice president come in for a fundraiser for me? For sure. So I think that kind of leadership. But yes, I mean, if you got some real recalcitrants. In fact, what Trump said the other day, I thought was very measured and very good on nominations. They asked him, are you going to primary senators who don't vote for your nominees? And he said, well, if they're unreasonable about it, if they don't have if they don't have some reasonable explanation, I thought that was perfect. He's saying if they're going to play hardball,
the reality is we don't need any particular nominee to win in 2026. My whole point of view is this is all about 2026. And if you get one vote that does the border and the military rebuild, the energy exploration, and especially the tax cuts, and you get it done, you're set for 2 years. I mean, you might get more wins, but the economy is what people are going to vote on. And you might have controversies and Truth Social and X controversies. But, Santa Trump is coming to town. If he takes control of this, he'll get what he wants, I think. Do you think I'm right? If he gets involved?
Yeah, although, again, look, it's a delicate situation. They've got a 2-vote majority in the House, and there is another body. I'll play devil's advocate with you a little bit. There's a reason John Thune is telling you he wants 2 bills. And I suspect it has less to do with John Thune's personal preferences than what he's hearing from his people. Remember, it's not just the House. He's also got to pass it in the Senate. And he didn't go into detail when he was on the show. I haven't talked to him about this, and I probably won't. He doesn't need to tell me anything. But there's a reason he wants to do 2 bills. So part of this, is everybody having some confidence in the people they've chosen as leaders. That may be the worst thing about this failure of the CR, is if it undermines confidence in Johnson, who's done a very good job so far. I mean, my attitude would be everybody can make mistakes, but you've got to have faith in the leadership and the way they negotiate tactical issues, or nothing's going to get done. So we need a lot of discussions.
This was a reality check that I think is actually very useful, Senator. Last word, reality checks can be useful.
I agree. It's a wake-up call for everybody. Look, this is doable. Jason Smith said that to you yesterday, but it's not going to be easy. Everybody's going to have to take some votes on some things that give them some heartburn. The leaders are going to have to be more transparent than they would like. The president's going to have to be more involved probably than he was in his first term. I don't think he was as hands-on in the Congress in the first with the Congress in the first term as he's going to need to be this first year. So everybody's going to have to adjust to this, and then we can get it done. But if we don't, if we're not smart about it, it'll fail.
They've got 33 days. We'll see if they can get their act together. Senator Jim Talent, always a pleasure to talk to you. Follow him on X at Jim Talent. He was there early. He is the man from the center right, the voice of reason in the Beltway and at the Reagan Institute. Thank you, Jim Talent. The rubble is still smoking from where the congressional resolution to keep the government open was left in a heap of dust and ashes. I'm joined by United States Senator Dan Sullivan to talk about something different but related to the CR, which is the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act. Senator Sullivan, in the collision of the CR with reality, what happened to the NDAA?
Hugh, good morning. Merry Christmas, and I hope you and your family are all doing well. By the way, hopefully you took in that great Army-Navy game. Better to watch Navy than the Cleveland Browns. I hate to say it, but
it's very much more fun to watch Navy than the Cleveland Browns, 100%. And yeah, the Navy won. We were happy.
Go Navy beat Army, and it was really impressive. I was there on the 50-yard line with my wife and a cousin and his wife. It was great.
Whole day. But what happens to the NDAA now, Senator?
Well, look, the NDAA, as is Chuck Schumer's standard practice, is he brought it up, end of the year, no amendments, no debate. We passed this, as you know, Hugh, a good bill, by the way, from the Senate last June. And Schumer, every year, because he doesn't prioritize national defense, doesn't prioritize our military, he shoves it up against the end of the year. So it passed last night. It's an okay bill. A lot of the good stuff that we got in the Senate got stripped out because Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries aren't prioritizing our national defense. So that's going to be signed by the president. You know, the NDAA, I know you know this. I think it's now 66 years in a row that we move that. But it's a disappointment that Chuck Schumer always jams us at the end of the year, no time to debate it, and just doesn't prioritize national defense. That's
so we did get most of it done, even though we lost some stuff.
We got most of it done. And there was some decent stuff in there. You may have seen a pay raise for the junior enlisted troops. This is really important. Biggest pay raise, in recent memory, 14.5%, which they needed with the Biden inflation crushing the young enlisted men and women, and with the recruiting crisis that these guys have hoisted upon the military. So those are the kind of things that are good in there. We're going to finally start rebuilding our Navy and Air Force, but we got a long way to go given what they just did. But a lot of bad stuff in there, too. I had a number of things, Hugh, that I gave a speech on the Senate floor 2 nights ago just laying out, hey, these are bipartisan things. I was able to get in the bill to go after the Chinese Communist Party, and the Dems on the House side, and with Schumer's help, they stripped these. It's kind of like, wait, whose side are you guys on? Don't you realize
I do not get what Hakeem Jeffries is up to, but they're going to end up being in the wilderness for 12 years. I have a new Fox News column. After Carter, they didn't get back for 12 years. And Biden's legacy is worse than Carter's, so I don't expect him to be back for a long time. So they're putting up a last stand on the CR, Mr. Senator Sullivan. What are we going to do about this? Because it looks to me like the government's going to shutter.
Well, look, I was starting to read through this CR. Again, I was not surprised. It was pulled 1,500 plus pages at the last minute, very limited time to review it. And I think the one thing President Trump raised a really good point last night was, why don't we do the debt limit now? The Biden, the Dems, their reckless spending, the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, the American Recovery Act, None of that had one Republican vote in the Senate, and that massively drove up the debt. So they should be, we should be dealing with that issue now as opposed to hoisting it on the Trump administration and the Republicans when we're in charge. I wish our leaders on both sides would have been negotiating a debt limit tied to the CR as opposed to President Trump having to raise it at the last minute. So we'll see. The one thing that's kind of, I know it doesn't seem like it's the fact, but the Dems are still in control of the Senate here with Schumer. And believe it or not, they're still in control of the White House, even though it seems like Donald Trump, not Joe Biden, is running the country right now. So, look, I think a clean CR with some kind of debt ceiling issue to deal with that now and some needed disaster relief might be a landing zone, but I'm not in the room negotiating these things.
I'm not in the room either. I don't know how we reestablish trust. The thing that surprised me the most, Senator, and it's not a lot of money, but a pay raise for Congress. If you don't tell people it's coming, it's going to be radioactive, and nobody told anybody that was in there, and that immediately attracted every heat-seeking missile from the right and the left that you could possibly imagine, and that blew up. Here's my question. What happens to the men and women in uniform if we don't have a CR? Do they get paid?
Yeah, I think that I'm almost sure, Hugh, that they still get paid. People still get their Social Security checks. This is all if the government shuts down. It's really a partial government shutdown, but there's no doubt it's disruptive. It doesn't end well when you have these shutdowns. So, I'm hoping that we can get some kind of extension to address a lot of the good points that President Trump put out there. I couldn't agree more with you on the pay raise. Nobody knew about it. I certainly didn't know about it. Again, we were reading through, reading through the bill when it got yanked, and this is the frustration of these behind the door deals that are negotiated with just the leadership. You get them at the last minute, usually bumping up against a holiday or a government shutdown. 1,500 pages this time. And it's just not the way to run the government on both sides, by the way. And, this
so here's my suggestion, whether they get a clean CR or not. If the government shuts down, it's going to be shuttered until January 22nd. But whether or not they get it, we need the president-elect and his team to sit down with Senator Thune and Speaker Johnson and hash out one package for reconciliation and budget. I know some people want to do two packages, and I know I'm losing this argument, but what do you hear? Because it just seems to me that Trump's got to let people know what he wants.
Well, look, I'm in the camp of two. I think coming in, two budget reconciliation bills, I think coming in and getting some important wins right off the bat with the Trump administration on border, on defense, and on energy. We can do that, Hugh. The president ran on those big issues. And, the tax component of a budget reconciliation bill is going to be complicated. We got it done in 2017. I was part of that effort. It is complicated. So my view is you take a win early on huge issues, by the way. Border, we can get huge national defense priorities in a budget reconciliation bill. And very importantly, from my perspective, energy, right? We got to open up Alaska. Biden shut my great state down. Heck, you may have seen in the NDAA, they killed this provision for a critical minerals road to a place called Ambler
I couldn't believe it
in Alaska. And then Biden announces an Angola railroad that the American people and American taxpayers are going to back to get critical minerals out of Africa, but not out of Alaska.
It made no sense. But, Senator, my counter, and I made this to the incoming majority leader as well, is I don't think the House majority is going to hang together. I just don't. I think they get one swing, and if you don't put the tax cuts in there with energy and the border and the defense rebuild, we're never going to see it. I mean, is it worth the risk?
I do think, Hugh, that those issues, the border, right? The president ran on that. That's the top priority. unleashing American energy. The president ran on that. That is a huge priority of Republicans. That's a top priority of mine, especially for Alaska. And national defense, the president ran on that, peace through strength. I think those are easier to get than the complication of dealing with this SALT issue on taxes. And the tax component of this, I think, is going to be really complicated. I think if you get a win on the border, defense, and energy, you come into the next bill with some momentum. You might be right. We got to take a swing on everything, but that makes that's really complicated when you have the tax and spending.
It is complicated, and it means a bunch of people, maybe a dozen people, have to work for the next 25 days to hammer it out. But my goodness, Senator,
we're working
we
on
are
it now, I can tell you.
We're playing Russian roulette
right
if we don't get this done. But I appreciate the NDAA. Even three-quarters of a great NDAA is better than no NDAA at all.
I agree with that 100%.
And I appreciate your effort on that. Senator Dan Sullivan of the Senate Armed Services Committee, always a pleasure. What I would love to hear is someone knocking on the home of a child whose mother or father is in prison, and it will be an Angel Tree visitor on Christmas or on Christmas Eve with a present from that prisoner, because you have donated to our Angel Tree campaign. Trish Regan is one of our great podcasters at the Salem Podcast Network. Give a listen to what Trish had to say.
I have 3 little kids, and I was telling them about the Angel Tree program and how important it is. And this week, especially, we should all just take a moment to think how lucky we are. But what about the little kids out there who don't even have a parent right now because they have a parent that is incarcerated in prison? And it's not the little kids' fault. It's so important right now to the kids, to me, to everyone here at Salem. We all want to do our part.
And we have been. All you have to do is go to HughHewitt.com, find that banner at the top. Thousands of you have done so. Maybe you've made the mental intention to do so. And then you forget because you're driving to work. Okay. I am asking you to remember that you forgot something when you get up to your desk. You forgot that you made a resolution to make a contribution to the Angel Tree banner. It's at the top of HughHewitt.com. It says, Make a Child's Christmas. You cannot miss it. Just remember, HughHewitt.com. It's the easiest way to do it. Also, to remind you, Andrew and Todd, boy, oh boy, the 10-year Treasury went up to 4.23. I want to go back over to our cut sheet for a moment and play Dick Durbin coming out of a conference yesterday about the omnibus, cut number 9.
Members are giving themselves a pay raise. Do you guys deserve a pay raise?
Well, that's news to me. It's good news. You know, what is it, 10 years or 14?
All right, there you go. That's news to me. Yeah, when the senators don't know that they're getting a pay raise, something has gone sideways. I don't know who came up with that. I don't know who put that in there. But when you get Dick Durbin say, that's news to me, that just tells me what a broken system we've got. We cannot wait for Trump to get back. There is no president. Oh, well. Oh, well. Joined by Senator Marsha Blackburn of the great state of Tennessee. Senator Blackburn, I have not talked to you since your big re-election win in November. Congratulations. It's been 4 or 5 weeks, so I gather the glow must have vanished by now, but congratulations. That was a pretty big win.
It was a wonderful win, and you were just so grateful to the people of Tennessee for their vote and that vote margin. And we are back in D.C. and hard at work, finishing up this year and looking forward to a great 2025.
Now, Senator, I hope you still talk to me after Ohio State puts a Buckeye tattoo on the Volunteers Saturday night. But
Not going to happen.
It's going to be a rough, you Tennessee people are not used to Ohio cold, so I'm just telling you, bring a muffler. But, Senator, the CR collapsed yesterday, and it collapsed. Dick Durbin was asked, what do you think about the pay raise? He said, news to me. Did you know there was a pay raise in the bill?
No one knew this. We were so surprised reading the bill to see that there was a pay raise. And it had not been discussed, or I should say, there was no discussion about this in the Senate. And we were just surprised when we got the bill, and it was a pay raise. And here's the thing: we need a continuing resolution to close out this year, get us into next year. We don't need 1,500 pages. good pages. That is what you call an omnibus spending bill. That's not what you call a continuing resolution.
It's
And
kind of a mini bus, isn't it? I told people there are four things. There's regular order, which we never get. There's CRs, which are bare bones. There are omnibuses, which are enormous. And then there are mini buses. An omnibus would be 6,000 pages, right?
well, it would have more than what this one did. But Hugh, this is, I don't know if I would term this a mini bus. There were some things like disaster relief that did need to be addressed. I agree with that. But then there was a lot of pork in there. There's money for the bridge and for the Haitian import program and other components that, it's just not the appropriate way to do it. We need regular order. The Republican-controlled House should have pushed for regular order. If you were going to have a 1,500-page bill, whether it was an omnibus or a minibus, you would send that through the Appropriations Committee.
Well, it's dead now, isn't it? Is the word gone forth that that's dead?
It is. We are hearing that it is dead on the House side, that they're not going to take a vote on that. We are also hearing that there's discussion about doing a clean CR so that we don't have a government shutdown. We'll see exactly what ends up happening with this. We are hopeful that within a few hours we will have that clean CR and the House will be able to take their vote today and send it over to the Senate.
So, Senator, let's look ahead to January. If the clean CR passes and it goes to January 30th or 31st or February 28th or something, then you need to do a budget, a reconciliation, and a package of trailer bills. I am for doing that once. I know incoming Majority Leader Thune and many Republicans think we need two reconciliations. What does Marsha Blackburn think?
My thought was that it would be a good, solid step to do the border, energy, and military in the first reconciliation bill while we're working through to get the tax bill done. Bear in mind, in 2017, when we did the Tax Cut and Jobs Act and used reconciliation for that, Hugh, that took us 11 months. So some of these things dealing with the border and with the energy issues, getting the price down at the pump, which will help us get down inflation, dealing with what we need for our national defense programs that are lapsing and contract authority that is not there for the military for 21st century warfare. Let's do that first. And we can walk and chew gum. The Senate is going to be very well organized. I cannot speak for the House.
Well, this is my concern, Senator. The 53 votes are there for whatever comes out in a package, and you could pass two reconciliations in your sleep. And I know that Senator Thune's going to do a good job and a good leadership team. I just don't think this House majority is going to stay together. And if that's the case, if you've got like 2 months, don't we want to run everything through that we can?
In that first reconciliation, I think we want to get everything that we can and not hold reconciliation until we get the tax bill done. We are going to have to get those permanent on the tax cuts. We also need to move on and address no tax on tips. We need to make certain that people are not paying tax. More people are not paying tax on their Social Security. That is actually a piece of legislation I've worked on for years. So let's make certain that we are moving the ball forward. Now, in the Senate, we are going to have our committee assignments completed by the end of the year. We're going to do our organizing resolution on January 3rd, on January 6th. Our committees will get organized. Chairman will be confirmed, and we will begin to issue the notices for the next week which will be the hearings for the cabinet members. We will start that process, and then on January 20th, we can begin those confirmation processes.
So let me ask you, Senator, are you going to stay on judiciary?
Yes, I am.
So you will get Pam Bondi, you'll get Todd Blanchett, the DAG, and you'll get Kash Patel. Do you intend to support Kash
Correct.
Patel?
Yes, I do. I have met with Kash. I know Kash. I've worked with him. I support him. He is going to do a fine job at the FBI. He's going to focus on the country and our nation and not on trying to just make certain that somebody's taking care of their crony.
I'm glad to hear this. I want to know, I said very boldly on Special Report 2 nights ago, I think Donald Trump's going to get all of his nominees, all of them.
I think you're right. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So that is going to happen fairly quickly, and I think the Senate is, with 53 votes, we're going to be able to hang together or hang separately in the Senate. But that House majority, don't you worry that there won't be any tax cuts and people who, I think we'll lose the House of Representatives if we don't reform the tax code, and we'll lose it and they'll start impeaching.
I agree with that. I think it's going to take, pardon me, I think it's going to require President Trump to just shake the House up, literally, and say, guys, come on. You've got to be the adults in the room, and you're going to have to deliver to the Senate bills that they can actually take action on. It's going to take 60 votes to move forward on bills in the Senate. So the House is going to have to realize they've got to send us something that we can get cloture on and we can move forward on. Then we can go to conference committee on, and then we can get it to the president's desk.
If the H.R. 2 comes back, well, I guess you can do that in the budget. I want to go back to the one package versus two. If Donald Trump walks out at Mar-a-Lago and says, I want one package, I want people to work for the next 3 weeks and give me a 3,000-page bill that fixes the tax code, the border, the military rebuild, energy and housing and everything else, do you think it could get done? If he just says, I want one package, does it get done?
If he were to say he wanted one package, the Senate has already started working on the tax cuts. Those of us at Finance Committee, we started on this process in the fall. So the Senate is well prepared and well organized. We are hopeful that the House, and Mike Johnson's a great guy, Steve Scalise is a great guy. I think they're going to be able to shape things up in the House, and I think the president will help them do that.
The big division is over the SALT deduction, and I really am confused by this. I would raise it and increase the debt and count on productivity growing us out of it, but is there a division in the Senate on the SALT deduction?
I have not heard that much of a division, so no.
So it really is, it's down to the House, to the Ways and Means Committee. And Jason Smith said on this program yesterday, he can get the tax bill done in January. If it's ready to go, are you all in favor of it?
If it's ready to go, then yes. Jason Smith tried a tax bill earlier and it did not quite pan out. So let's hope that we can see some progress. Let's hope that the House comes together. And let's be hopeful that we can get things to President Trump's desk.
And let's be hopeful that you'll talk to me after Saturday night, because you'll be mad. You'll be very mad. Senator Blackburn, good to talk to you. Merry Christmas. Congratulations again on a big win in Tennessee. I'm just sorry for your Vols in advance. Be well.
Oh, no, my Vols are going to win.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I just don't want you folks to be too upset about this. And I got listeners all across Tennessee, and I love you folks. I love you in Nashville and Memphis. Todd Stern, I love all of you people, but the Buckeyes are going to put a big one on you because they are a little bit angry about that Michigan game. And therefore, Chip Kelly may actually throw the ball as opposed to run it in the middle of the line, which is actually the Volunteers' best thing. Also happened to be the Wolverines' best thing, but we still ran it right in the middle of it. I don't get it. I'm not here to rag on Ryan Day. I want Ryan Day to be the coach of Ohio State for 25 years, like Woody, and I'm not here to rag on him. Let me remind you that Trump, if you text the word Trump, all right, you can write TRUMP. If you text the word Trump to 94878, you will be entered in the Salem giveaway. We are going to give away 2 tickets to the inauguration, 2 tickets to inaugural ball, all expenses paid, trip to 2 for the Trump inauguration. All you have to do is text Trump to 94878. Also want to remind you for the last time that over at HughHewitt.com, we have got the Angel Tree banner, and I'm begging you, the more people that will send us $30 or $60, if you want to sponsor 5 kids, it's $150. You want to sponsor 10, it's $300. The more that we do today and tomorrow, the more that we can do on Christmas morning via Angel Tree. Tax deductible, tried and true. They do what they say they're going to do. Please be generous. Joined by Josh Kraushaar of Jewish Insider. Josh, good morning. It appears as though Speaker Johnson and Hakeem Jeffries did not keep their colleagues in the Senate up to date on what is in the CR. Let me play for you Dick Durbin confronted by Manu Raju from CNN in the hallway of the Senate yesterday. Cut number
Members are giving
9.
themselves a pay raise. Do you guys deserve a pay raise?
Well, that's news to me. It's good news.
All right, that's never a good sign, is it, Josh, when the senior Democrat says that's news to me?
Well, Hugh, you know that these continuing resolutions, these end-of-year funding bills often have a lot of elements to them in addition to funding the government. That they've always been the source of much contention, both between the House and the Senate, between Republicans and Democrats. To me, the story here is the megaphone of Elon Musk. We didn't hear anything from Trump world about really having serious concerns about the CR. Mike Johnson was going along with it. He seemed to be pretty optimistic as of a little over 24 hours ago. And all of a sudden, Elon Musk went on a tweet storm yesterday, and that really had an impact in public opinion, certainly with the Republican base, which is already, the Freedom Caucus and the fiscal conservatives already don't like these goodie bags, Christmas tree type CR resolutions. So yeah, we're in a mess. Looks like we may at least have a small government shutdown, and no one knows the path forward, Hugh.
Well, I am more amused than I am distressed. I don't want the military not to get paid, so I hope they pass a clean CR. But, it's not the end of the world if the government shuts down for 40 days until the Republicans get here. I don't want to pay billions for the Commanders Stadium. I don't want to pay raise unless I've talked about it, and I don't know how much it is. I can't believe I would like to actually know the genetic tree, the ancestral tree of that pay raise. Do you think we'll ever find out who came up with the idea, let's pay ourselves more money in this CR?
Well, I can speak as a sports fan. I'm a big DC sports fan, Hugh, and there was a lot of misinformation. I follow this stuff closely, following the Commanders. The legislation doesn't pay for a new Commander Stadium. It transfers the land from the federal government to the Washington, D.C. government so they can build a stadium, have access to that land at RFK Stadium to build a new stadium for the Commanders. And if you saw on social media, and this is part of the problem these days, a lie can go around the world very fast and have a big impact, and it affects public opinion even if it's not accurate. So there was no money for a Commander Stadium as part of the CR. Now you can disagree that whether that should be part of a CR, whether you should have these extraneous elements that are not part of funding the government.
If they give the land to the District of Columbia, how much money is that land worth?
It's the federal government owns the land. If you've been to RFK Stadium, it's a decrepit site that's a blight on the nation's capital. So it would allow the city the ability to develop it, along with the Commanders who are paying and the Commanders' ownership involved.
You see, I'm opposed to this because I want the Commanders to move to Virginia, and so the Browns are closer. So I don't put that in the CR either. All right, let's talk about going forward. We can argue about pay raises and the Commanders. I don't see any way out of this mess, Josh. What's going to happen?
Well, I don't see any way out of this mess before the deadline this weekend. I think, I think the big question is, can this alliance, this partnership between Donald Trump and Elon Musk survive politically? I think government shutdown, we've seen this before. There've been short-term government shutdowns. Usually it goes away. There's not a huge political impact. But look, if this is the new normal and spending cuts are not popular, right? There are goodies. There are reasons why individual lawmakers want their pet projects funded, and this has been one of the vehicles in which that has been accomplished. In the long term, if Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, as part of the Doge Commission, end up cutting popular spending in certain states or districts, that could actually have a long-term political effect and may not ultimately be popular for the White House.
But if they don't do, I am now more convinced than ever, if they do 2 reconciliations as opposed to 1, the second one won't get through. So I think this focuses the mind on the fact it's a very small majority. You'd better get Trump pounding the table for 1 bill and do it early with Musk and Vivek behind him, or we're going to have Quicksilver shattering. Do you agree my pessimism about the second package that's
Yeah, I do. Boy, if you think this was bad, look at the nature of the makeup of the Republican narrow majority. Mike Johnson has lost a lot of political capital over this. I totally agree that there's going to be rough seas ahead on Capitol Hill. But I do think, like, philosophically, Trump is sort of, he's not someone who likes to cut entitlements. He's not like he's not a Republican who came up in the balanced budget and let's cut wasteful spending mentality. Elon Musk is, and you can see that in his Doge fueled worldview. I think that's at some point going to come into tension, and maybe one of the things that kind of breaks that alliance.
I think it's going to be sooner rather than later, which is why I want one big package that Donald Trump tells Elon, we're passing this, and tells Vivek, we're passing this, and tells Johnson and Thune and everybody else, this is what we're doing, one big package, and get it done, because this is not going to hold together. This is the most, and if they don't get that done, the tax cuts, say goodbye to the Republican majority in 2026. Say hello to impeachments 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 in 2027 and 2028. Josh Kroshauer, always good to see you. Have a great Hanukkah, Josh. Jewish Insider is where you go to learn about Syrian mass graves. Horrible story, but very riveting, Josh. And I hope a peace deal and a hostage release settlement this weekend. I'm being a little optimistic there as well.